Welcome to Enjoy English. I'm Alice.
I'm Betty.
And today in our science unit, we have Why Do We See Faces Everywhere? Let your imagination run wild and enjoy the magic of, let me remember it, it's pareidolia, right?
Right, pareidolia.
I looked it up and I forgot it because the word is just so long and so unusual, but it's what our unit today is about.
Right, and it's fun because today it's going to be an all-English unit, so I know it's going to be a little bit difficult, but I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun, and I am pretty sure if you stay until the very end, you'll realize that you probably know more than you expect, that you will, right?
So let's get into it, right?
Okay, and probably let's take a look at the phrase here. Alice, can you explain? Run wild?
I would say that run wild usually means that you let it run free, right? You let your imagination go everywhere. You let it explore all corners of the earth, right? Like, let your imagination run free, I think is another synonym.
Right, run free, run wild.
So, yeah, let's get into it after the break.
Why do we see faces everywhere? When you were a child, did you ever look up at the sky and see a cloud that looked like a teddy bear or a battleship? This is an example of a phenomenon called pareidolia. It happens when our brains try to make sense of unclear images by viewing them as something meaningful or familiar. One of the most famous examples of pareidolia is the Face on Mars photo. In 1976, a picture of the surface of the planet Mars was taken. It showed a pile of rocks that looked like a human head. This led many people to believe that there might be life on the planet. Other cases of pareidolia include seeing houses or cars with faces, or even spotting Jesus on a piece of toast. According to scientists, humans are born with the ability to recognize faces, so seeing them in objects is completely natural. Pareidolia is not limited to seeing faces. We can also see familiar objects or animals everywhere, such as the rabbit on the moon in Chinese culture. This shows that our brain has the ability to find connections and create meaning out of random patterns.
All right, let's get into the first paragraph. We have, when you were a child, did you ever look up at the sky and see a cloud that looked like a teddy bear or a battleship? If any of you had a childhood, I think we all have, right? We've seen clouds that look like something other than a cloud, right? We see, oh, that looks like a dragon, or that looks like a banana, or whatever. It just looks like something that's not just a cloud.
Right, so it's probably a very universal experience. Like every universal means very common experience. When we, kids, they see clouds, they just very naturally feel that, oh, there's a face, oh, there's a rabbit, something like that. So it's fun.
I like that you said it's a universal experience because, yeah, it's not just for people from one country, it's for everybody.
But do you feel that when you grow older, perhaps you don't see it as often?
Maybe I think you just don't look at the clouds so often, I think, right? I don't know. I guess I could if I tried, but maybe I wouldn't think about it as much.
Right.
This is an example of a phenomenon called pareidolia, which again is like, I have to think about it every time because
very tricky word.
You definitely don't use it very often, but that is what this phenomenon is called.
Right, and I think this unit is a very good unit for practicing your reading comprehension. When you read something and there is a big word like pareidolia, like here we have today, so what happens is people start getting panicked. They assume that you have to know every word in order to get the true meaning from the text. But actually, when you see a big word like that, the writer of this article is secretly dropping you hints. And what you need to do is to kind of picking up those hints through reading. So here, let's see one hint of what pareidolia might be. Actually, in the subtitle, you see that your imagination run wild. So pareidolia is probably related to imagination. This is the sense that you get. And this is an example of a phenomenon. What is an example? When you see cloud and you assume that it isn't a cloud, it is a rabbit. Okay, it's shaped like a rabbit. So this phenomenon is called pareidolia. So it definitely has something to do with imagination.
It happens when our brains try to make sense of unclear images by viewing them as something meaningful or familiar. So that explains more about this phenomenon, right? How we see something and maybe we don't know what it is, but we try to make sense of it, right? We try to make it clear, try to understand it, and we say, oh, it kind of looks like something I do know, like a teddy bear or a battleship. I know what those are, so that's why you kind of associate it with those things you know.
And it kind of makes sense because as human beings, I think we're always trying to make sense of things around us. Like sometimes when my students, when they listen to a word that they don't recognize, they just assume it's another word they recognize. So for example, they heard something like brew, B-R-E-W, but they've never learned the word brew. They just assume it's blue, B-L-U-E, right? So as human beings, we are always trying to, make sense of things around us. And what does it mean when we try to make sense of things?
When we try to make sense of things, usually means that we're trying to understand it or like clarify. That's another good word I think people like to use. It's like you want to take something that you don't really know or understand and understand it, right? Or you at least try to understand it.
And people make sense of things and things make sense. So if something makes sense, that means it is understandable, it is clear, it's easy to understand, so it doesn't make sense. Okay, I don't get it. What does that mean? Okay.
It's like I don't know. It doesn't make sense. So hopefully this all made sense, and let's talk about the second paragraph next. All right, so paragraph 2, we have one of the most famous examples of pareidolia is the face on Mars photo. So again, we talked about pareidolia, right? Trying to make sense of things that you don't know and trying to think, all right, it's something familiar, something that I do know, that I'm used to or like knowledgeable about. And they have a very famous example is this photo called Face on Mars.
Have you seen that photo?
I actually have not. So that is something that for me maybe wouldn't be so familiar, but maybe for a lot of people it would be.
It's super creepy, and you actually see a face on Mars, and just very clear one.
Oh, now I want to look at it.
It's a good photo, but I assume that there are just little holes on Mars, and it looks exactly like what you would be expecting.
Oh,
it
wow.
has like eyes and nose and
oh my gosh,
and everything.
I've seen it like on the moon, but I haven't seen it on Mars. So,
right.
Yeah, I want to see if that's similar or not.
So in the previous paragraph, we know that pareidolia happens when you try to make sense of things, right? So now we are giving you an example, and that example is the face on the Mars photo. So if you don't know it, check it out. And here, I just want to point out a grammar point, one of the most famous examples. So out of those examples, so example, you have to add an S, it's a plural, but one of the examples. So the verb is in its singular form. One of the examples is, not are. Be careful with this one.
In 1976, a picture of the surface of planet Mars was taken. And again, back then, their technology was obviously not as great as it is today. So for back then, that was a very significant moment, a significant achievement that they were able to take a picture of the surface of planet Mars because it's so far away from us, right? So that was a very significant achievement back then.
And we talked about being human beings, we like to make sense of things around us. So I think like space exploration is kind of sort of fall into that category. You try to make sense of the universe, right? So they take pictures, they took pictures in Mars, and one picture particularly stood out.
It showed a pile of rocks that looked like a human head. So a pile of rocks would be like a stack of rocks, right? Not just one rock, but a pile of rocks. And this looks like a human head. That's a little weird. Right. A little bit.
Right, so when you have a pile of something, definitely, for example, when you say a pile of paper, you don't just have a piece of paper, you have much of paper.
Yeah, you have like up. Not even just two. I would say you'd have like a lot of pieces of paper. Yeah.
To make it a pile. And we can use pile as a verb when you pile something up, Or, for example, snow piled up. So you can say somebody piled something up or something pile up.
So we have that looks like a human head, and this led many people to believe that there might be life on the planet. It's a little bit of a stretch, I would say, because just because it looks like a human head doesn't mean there's life on the planet, unless they think aliens on the planet made that, right? They purposely piled it up. I don't know, but I think it's a little bit of a stretch.
I also feel that this probably is blown out of its proportion, right?
Yeah, maybe not. How many people is many people, right?
Right. So, yeah, basically so we are trying to find life on basically any types of like planets. For example, I don't know, moon and some other.
Yeah, I think we always like imagine there are aliens or some other life forms on other planets, but I think again, this one thing leading people to believe it is a little strange to me, but I don't know. Maybe back then, maybe since we didn't know as much about outer space, that seems very possible, I guess.
Right. And the word lead here, we're using as past form, led. Sometimes we say lead to. If you put them together, the to would be a preposition. So lead to a solution, lead to a bad outcome. But when you separate the phrase, led many people to, basically it just causes many people to. But here, this to, it is an infinitive. So you need to add a verb in its root form at the back. So here we have believe. Be careful with this one. Lead to, now. Lead somebody to, verb.
Other cases of pareidolia include seeing houses or cars with faces or even spotting Jesus on a piece of toast. So if you spot something, it's kind of the same thing as like you see something, like, or I spotted a dog with a pink collar the other day or something, right? So in this case, you spotted Jesus on a piece of toast. I think I might have seen that photo before, but I'm not sure.
That photo is probably very famous.
Yeah, I would say, and it does kind of look like it, yeah. I just think, again, you have to really like use your imagination. It doesn't look like it exactly, but if you use your imagination, you can see it.
I think it's fun that we often claim that we see something, for example, in pictures, right? Ghost pictures. We see spirits in the background, right? So perhaps we are trying very hard to prove that there's like special existence other than human beings.
I think so.
Right.
Or just like that there's something more significant than just what you see. There's more to it.
Right. And probably when your mind is so focused on seeing things, seeing possible existence of something else, this is kind of what you see. Your mind invents everything.
That's so true.
But probably it might be true that there is like life in other planets, or there are ghosts. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. Maybe the ghosts made Jesus on the toast.
And here we see, I want to point your attention to this other cases. So we talked about other, another, the other many times in our closed test. And I think it's important here, when you read the article, do you see the range? Do we mention like how many phenomena we're going to talk about? If no, then we don't really mention the range of it. So here we don't say the other cases. If the range of something is not specified, we use other cases. Okay, but if cases, it is a singular, you use another case. Okay.
Next we have, according to scientists, humans are born with the ability to recognize faces, so seeing them in objects is completely natural. And actually, I think I have heard that they have tried to do some studies on babies, which is difficult because babies cannot really talk and tell us what they're thinking. But I think according to the studies they did, they have shown that babies can recognize faces from a very, very young age. So that makes sense that if we can recognize faces from such an early age, maybe we see them in other places that are not just faces, because maybe that's one of the few things that babies can recognize so early.
All right. So yeah, it's pretty interesting, right? This this phenomenon. I think it's like quite fun and interesting to know, so scientific. I actually didn't know the term until I was prepping for this unit.
Yeah.
Right. And here we see this word recognize, super important. So recognize is to know something because you have experience of it, because you've seen something before. For example, there is a person coming towards you and you said to your friend next to you, say, oh, I recognize that person. Yeah, probably someone from high school, right? I recognize that voice. So recognize, you know something because you have experience of it.
Yeah, I think that's a good word to know, actually. Like, I recognize you, or I recognize this word, right?
Right, or I barely recognize him.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. It's a very good word to know, so keep that in mind.
Also, this object, what does that mean when there's an object? I've seen them in objects.
Objects are just basically things, right? Just like objects around you. I guess you wouldn't really say people. I mean, people are kind of objects, but usually when we use it just normally, like in conversation, we just talk about non-living things. Yeah, maybe in some situations you can say people are objects, but usually we talk about like things that are not alive.
Right. So, for example, your pen and paper, they're objects, right? Table, chairs, they're objects. But for animals, your dog or plants, roses, or human beings, we don't usually use object to describe these things, living things.
It just feels weird. So let's think about that for a little bit and ponder, and then get to paragraph 3. All right, our final paragraph starts off with, pareidolia is not limited to seeing faces. So previously we had talked about really only recognizing faces pretty much because we talked about that face on Mars photo and how babies can recognize faces from a young age, but it's not limited to it, so that means we can see other things besides faces.
Right, so not limited to something. Basically, the to, this is the preposition. So you see in the sentence, we don't say see, not limited to see, but not limited to seeing faces. So be careful with this one. And can you give us a sentence with
limited to doing something? I guess you could say that because Betty is very good at languages, she is not limited to just speaking Chinese, but she can also speak English and other...
That's all.
Oh, that's it? Okay. That's all? Oops, okay. But still, 2 languages is still good.
For example, learning new things is not limited to young people. Old people can also learn, lifelong learning. Yeah,
yes,
okay.
That's good. It's like you don't have a limit, right? You can do beyond the limit, right? You can do as many as you want or as few as you want or however you want to say it. But basically there's no limit. There's no end.
Right.
We can also see familiar objects or animals everywhere, such as the rabbit on the moon in Chinese culture. And, right, this rabbit probably does not actually live on the moon, but it's just a story, I think, that came about because maybe some people were looking at the moon back in the day and they said, that looks like a rabbit.
Do you know the story with a rabbit on the moon? Do you know what's going on with that story?
I think I know the basics. I can't remember how the rabbit got on the moon. Did they say that?
The rabbit is probably there, living there.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's, you know, the lady that like flew all the way to the moon. I don't know if it's the pet she carried with her or...
is that right? Okay. Yeah, I just know there's a story associated with the rabbit on the moon and a woman. I don't know if the rabbit was always there or if...
Or the rabbit was living there because she, it was probably a servant or something, a helper.
Oh, okay. So...
in the moon palace.
Ah, okay. So that would, that would be, because I don't remember why the rabbit is there. I just remember, okay, there's a rabbit on the moon. And I think I've heard that the origins is, yes, most likely somebody saw, hey, that looks like a rabbit. and then some creative person came up with a good story about it.
Right, but it's so fun. Like, how did you see a rabbit on there in the first place?
Yeah, and not every culture has that because in the US, as far as I know, there's no story about rabbits on the moon. The most we have is just that we have the man in the moon, and that's not even really a story per se. I think it's just that if you look at the moon from Earth, you can often see like certain craters that kind of look like a face, right? It looks like two eyes and a mouth. So that's kind of the only story I can think of.
Just probably like the one with the Mars.
Right,
thing.
yeah, it's just very similar. Just so there kind of looks like a face, like eyes, mouth, right? So I think that's the only similar thing, but it's still the same idea of seeing a familiar object or animal or person, right? Just you see them in places that they don't belong. This shows that our brain has the ability to find connections and create meaning out of random patterns. So connections, right, things that are related. So this moon is related to a person's face. Normally they're not related because they're so far away, but in this case, right, because of pareidolia, people associate a face with the moon. These are connected or related somehow.
Right, so connection is the noun form of connected, right? And connection is usually just a relationship between things, between people. And sometimes you can use it in its plural form, connections. That means people you know that are powerful, that can, help you go through things a lot easier. For example, I want to go to that concert, but the tickets are sold out. Do you have connections? So that means do you have people probably working in that industry that can probably get me a ticket? Right.
Yeah, that's a good word to use actually, right? You have connections to help you.
Right. And we also see several difficult words at the back, random. So when things, or for example, when you call on students at random, what does that mean?
That means that there's not like a pattern or like a rhyme or reason, as we like to say, but it's just that you choose them randomly or just without a pattern. Just choose, hey, you. It's not like 1, 2, 3, 4 or 2, 4, 6, 8. Those are patterns. Random would just be like 3, 10, 21,
right.
36.
Just call out whoever you want to call out.
Right, you just pick people like at random or just without thinking about it.
Right.
So that's random.
And then patterns. For example, clothes have patterns, right?
Right.
For example, look, the dress I'm wearing is in floral pattern, right? So pattern means the usual way things are done, like the rule that things are done according to that rule. So basically, this is pattern, right? So we create meaning out of random patterns. So actually, probably no patterns at all, random patterns.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It is kind of funny because if you say pattern by itself, it kind of means something that repeats, right? So like a floral pattern, right? It's like because the flowers repeat themselves all over the dress. But if you say a random pattern, it is kind of a silly phrase because they're kind of two opposite things, right? So a random pattern basically means
no pattern.
No pattern
at all, right?
It is very silly, but we do say random patterns for some reason. So yes, that is, I don't know, very random word, random phrase, random patterns. But yes, that's pareidolia,
right?
Actually, not really, but still.
So following the pattern of the show, now it's time to say
goodbye, I guess, in a random pattern. No, this is a pretty standard pattern. So that's all the time we have today. We'll see you all next time.
Bye-bye.